Welcome to Goals with God, Moms Edition, where we help purpose-driven moms fulfill their God-given purpose. I'm your host, Koach Katlyn. I am a TV host of this show and The Christian View, a wife, a mom, a life coach, a preacher, and I am so honored to serve as your guide as we, as moms together, purposely fulfill our God-given purpose. And, you know, being a mom is so difficult, and so this is a great community to stay together. I want to invite you to follow me on Facebook, Koach Katlyn with a K, Instagram, Koach Katlyn, YouTube, Koach Katlyn, and KoachKatlyn.com to connect, because we can't do this alone. And this Goals with God Moms community is all about staying connected and really encouraging each other on this journey. So here we are in season 1, episode 3, season 1. I can't believe it. We are already here. And what we've been talking about in season, I encourage you to go back, make sure you download the app, you go back, you check it out, whatever you're watching this on, make sure you check out the first episode. And we talked about intentionally going after life. We talked about making sure. I told a story. You'll have to go back to check it out in the first episode of this season. But I talked about a story about ending up at Planet Fitness when I had intended to go to the church. I ended up at Planet Fitness and I had intended to go to the church. I zoned out. And we talked about how as moms, that's what we can do. We can accidentally zone out. Moms, anybody, we can zone out in life. And we have great intentions of ending up one place, but we end up somewhere else because we zone out and we get busy. We become reactive, and a reactive life leads to regret. But we've got to learn to be proactive. Proactive lives lead to our greatest potential. And so, as I mentioned before, and I said I'd say it every day this season, how can we teach our kids to go after their dreams if we don't go after ours? How can we teach our kids to go after their dreams if we don't go after ours? So that's what we're journeying on, and we're answering 2 questions in season 1. 2 questions. The first question we're asking is, why do we grow? Why do we grow? And I'm reviewing each time in our last episode, we reviewed the Law of Intentionality. Growth doesn't just happen. And this episode, we're going to be talking about the Law of Awareness. You must know yourself to grow yourself. We're going over in this season, why do we grow? The 5 invaluable laws of growth as taught by my mentor, John Maxwell. And then we're going to learn how do we personally grow. And you're going to walk away from this season 1. So that's why I encourage you, stay tuned for all episodes this whole season and go back if you've missed any, because you're going to learn why you grow and how you grow. You're going to have practical tools at the end of this season to be a mom who is a mom on purpose with a purpose, who knows how to grow herself daily, how to transform your life and leadership in 60 minutes a day, because you may not lead an organization or you may lead an organization, but as women, we do lead our homes. So we are going to dive right into law number 2. So we talked about what we were going to go over all season in season 1, how to transform our life and leadership in 60 minutes a day. In episode 2, we talked about the first law. Why do we grow? The first law of growth is the law of intentionality. Growth doesn't just happen. Growth doesn't just happen. Remember, change is automatic. We're all going to change and get older, but growth is optional. We can choose to grow. Today, I'm excited to talk about the second law in the 5 laws that we're going to be going over, the law of awareness. You must know yourself to grow yourself. You must know yourself to grow yourself. Have you ever watched American Idol or America's Got Talent or The Voice? And somebody thought they could sing and they couldn't. I remember American Idol really came out as I was in middle school, and it was just like a fun family thing. We would, after dinner, we would watch American Idol on the nights it came on. I believe it came on Monday nights, and we were there from like the beginning, like Kelly Clarkson era. Those of you with me, you know. And I remember we watched the auditions. And time after time, every single season we watched, there were always those people whose mom had told them they could sing or who just thought they could sing. And Simon Cowell literally shot them straight truth that they couldn't. They could not sing. And it was so sad to watch, because you were like, why did your mom tell you that you could sing? Because you can't. And they embarrassed themselves. Why? Because they had no self-awareness. Have you ever been around people like that just in public who had no self-awareness, that maybe they came across harsh, or maybe they did something rude and they just weren't aware of it, or they had an annoying habit and they just weren't aware of it? See, it's very important that we are aware of who we are and our tendencies. The law of awareness allows us to really take a look at ourselves. We must know ourselves to grow ourselves. For me, and what does this mean? For me, I know after a thorough examination and asking those around me that patience, it's not a virtue that I have. I want it done yesterday what I thought of today. I am living 10 years down the road and can get frustrated in today, in this moment. And as many of you are sitting at home laughing right now, having a newborn truly teaches you a level of patience you have never known. It has been a patience situation. And so I'm aware that patience is not something I have. So I know it's an area I have to grow in. I'm also aware that I talk fast, so I intentionally try to talk slower. But I know that those are areas that I have to grow in. So you must know yourself to grow yourself. 2 Corinthians 13:5 reminds us that we must examine ourselves. We must examine ourselves and know who we are. Yes, that talks about testing our faith, but we must examine ourselves to know who we are. I think oftentimes as moms, we are so busy thinking about what everybody else needs so I am a former Mrs. Georgia, a USA, and one of the questions we would always get is, tell us about yourself. So if you're a former pageant girl watching this, or a current pageant lady, you can answer that question right off the hook. But I find that oftentimes when I ask a mom, when I'm coaching a client, when I'm asking a mom, what are your strengths? What annoys you? They are not as aware. They're like, I don't know, I'm not sure. If I say, now, what's it like my son's Asher? What is Asher's tendency? And I'm always like, he loves to get his diaper changed. He loves to take a bath. He loves listening to Kirk Franklin. He's very musical. He loves these different things. But I found that moms can oftentimes be aware of what their kids' tendencies are. They know exactly what their husband's tendencies are, but they don't know themselves. They've been so busy being the best wife. Let me make sure you're good. They've been so busy being a great mom, and they know every detail of, like, he's coughing this way, so he needs this amount of this, or his food needs to be cut up in this way. No, you did it wrong. They know exactly. You know what your kids need. You're aware of them, but you're not aware of yourself. And that's not good. We have to begin to examine ourselves as mothers so that we know who we are. James Lowell, I love this quote. James Lowell says, no one can produce great things who is not thoroughly sincere in dealing with himself or herself. No one can produce great things who is not thoroughly sincere in dealing with himself. I'm going to say herself for the sake of this. No one can produce great things. You know what this speaks to me as a mom? How can I produce a good child? How can I produce a great child if I don't know myself? If I don't know the things that I tend to fall into that may be a bad example, that may be a bad routine? Because guess what? Unfortunately, our personal habits will impact our children. What we do, our kids will tend to do. You know how you'll ask somebody, well, why do you cook like that? Or why do you do this? And they'll be like, well, my mom did it this way. So often I arrange stuff in my refrigerator. I drink coffee. I enjoy most all the things that my mom likes. Why? Not because she taught it to me, just because I saw it and that's what I want to do. If we want to produce great things in life, if we want to produce great children, which it's our assignment if God has gifted us to be mothers, we have to be aware of ourselves. Because if we're not aware of who we are, we will put that on our children. And And let me say this, I've seen oftentimes, this is my favorite quote. It says, I've seen good parents produce bad children. I've seen bad parents produce good children. He said, but weird parents always produce weird children. It's just one of my favorite quotes of all time. But we have to be aware, because what I've noticed in my line of coaching and in pastoring alongside my husband, one thing that I've seen is that when a mom has low self-esteem that she's unaware of, a lot of times the children will have low self-esteem. If a mom is really insecure, the child will be really insecure. If a mom struggles with addiction, a lot of times that child will struggle with addiction. If the mom is not very disciplined, the child tends to not be that disciplined. And not to put it all on you, by the grace of God, we're all going to make mistakes as mothers. I've been a mom 3 months to the day of this filming, and I can't even begin to list the number of mistakes I've made. Even before I can't even begin to list them. I would be embarrassed. But we have to be aware of those things within us so that we can grow out of those things, so that our children can see us transform, and then it can translate to them. So I love this thing. It says, to grow, you must know yourself, your strengths and weaknesses, your interests and opportunities. You must be able to gauge not only where you've been, but also where you are now. Otherwise, you cannot set course for where you want to go. Let me summarize this in a simple phrase. We as moms have to begin to become aware of ourselves. We need to sit down, whether we have to hide out, whether we have to go to the car, whether we have to go on a grocery run. Have you found that leaving your kids with a spouse or a grandparent, and you're like, I'm going on a grocery run. My husband's like, it took 3 hours at the grocery. I'm like, oh my goodness, I know. Everybody was out. They were just getting everything. And you're like, oh, but I also went to Starbucks and I swung by Target, and I just sat in the parking lot and kind of slept in the recline in my chair. Moms, But what this means is that we have to get alone and begin to take a list. What are my strengths? And begin to think about it. Maybe you are not aware of what your strengths are. Ask a good friend that you trust, not in a cocky way, but ask your friend, what do you think some of my strengths are? I would ask, this is practical, I would ask 2 to 3 people that you are close to, that you trust, what are my strengths? And then, even more trusted, ask someone, what are my weaknesses? What do you think are my weak areas? List some of yours that you already have. List some of your strengths and weaknesses, and become aware of those things. Become aware of those things. And seeing the weaknesses is not a thing to condemn ourselves. Seeing our weaknesses allows us to say, all right, I need to improve this, but also I can even become greater at my strengths. And this is what I want to portray to my children. See, it kind of goes back, or it totally goes back to the law we talked about in episode 2 about the law of intentionality. You see, when we're aware of our strengths, we can be aware, and our weaknesses, we can say, these are the traits I want my children to have, and intentionally display those to them. But if we're not aware of our strengths or weaknesses, how are we going to display them to our children and intentionally shape and mold those babies? So we need to begin to get alone and say, what are my strengths, what are my weaknesses, and become aware of who we are. Sometimes that's the greatest relief, to just become aware of our tendencies. I know when I get stressed, I tend to just get negative. That's what happens to me. Or because I used to suffer with an eating disorder, when I deal with body image issues, I'm aware of it now, and I know that I do not want to display that onto my son. I don't want him to have body image issues. I don't want him to struggle with that. So I'm extra intentional to be like, you are so handsome. You are are so cute. Look at those muscles. I'm very aware to not talk about my body image in front of my child. And not saying that sometimes you don't look in the mirror and say, why did you do this to me? I've had this conversation with him as a baby, like, 9 months? This is what you did to me? You gave me this extra cellulite. This is all on you, son. But I can't blame him. He didn't make me go back for the Oreo Blizzard, okay? But the point is that we have to be aware of ourselves so that we know what we are portraying to our children. There are 3 kinds of people. I love what my mentor John Maxwell says, and this is so powerful. There are 3 kinds of people when it comes to direction. So you have to be aware of where you are. Like, if I am going to New York City, I have to be aware that right now I'm in Atlanta, Georgia. I have to be aware of where I'm at so that I know where I'm going. But it says 3 kinds of people when it comes to direction. Number 1, people who don't know what they would like to do. Number 2, people who know what they would like to do but don't do it. And 3, people who know what they would like to do and do it. So there are those who don't know what they want to do. They're not aware of what they want to do. They're not aware of who they are. They're not aware of the attributes they want to share with their children, the purpose that God has for them. There are those who know what they think that God wants them to do, the traits that they want to display to their children, confidence, boldness, and they want them to see that they can go after their dreams, but they don't do it. They're not intentional, like we learned in the last episode. Or there are people who know what they want. They're aware of what they want, what character traits, what they want their children to see them going after and doing, and they do it. And I want to encourage you, be a doer. Your children will remember the most impactful thing in my life that has shaped me to be where I am today, to be on the shows that I am today, to have the businesses that I have, to have the family I have, is that I saw parents who intentionally went after their dreams and displayed those characteristics of confidence, boldness, and doing things afraid even when they were unsure. And they would explain that to us. You know, they would always say, I'm not perfect, but here's what I do know. And I'll oftentimes as moms saying, I don't know it all, but this is what I do know. And being aware of what we want to share with our children, it's so important, because let's have a real chat. The world is aware of our children's weaknesses. The world is aware of our weaknesses. Instagram is going to try to teach them and make them aware maybe of a fault, maybe, of evil going on in the world. Facebook is going to try to teach them. YouTube is going to try to teach them. But if we aren't aware of who we are and what we want to teach our children and what we want to display to our children, because guess what? No matter who the greatest superstar is in all the world, no matter, whether they're into this sports star over here, this YouTube star over here, this Instagram influencer over here, you as the parent will always be the one who influences your child the most. What do you want them to see? What do you want them to see? You have to be aware of what your weaknesses are so that you can be intentional to show your children your strengths. Now, it's okay. Sometimes we're going to show them our weaknesses, but we have to know what our weaknesses are, and those can be teachable moments. But we have to intentionally say, this is a child I want to shape, and I want to be this example, someone who goes after their dreams, someone who is disciplined, someone who cares about others, someone who is focused and determined to become all that God's called them to be. Because guess what? Ephesians 2:10. I said it before, I'll say it again. It's my favorite verse of all time. We are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which Christ prepared in advance for us to do. Guess what? The greatest example we can give to our children is by becoming all that we are supposed to be in God, so that they become all they're supposed to be in God. That's what we're all here for, to become the most we can be in God and to live out our God-given purpose and be an example to them to live out their God-given purpose. Woodrow Wilson says this: "We live in an age disturbed, confused, bewildered, afraid of its own forces, in search not merely of its road, but even of its direction. There are many voices of counsel, but few voices of vision. There is much excitement and feverish activity, but little concert of thoughtful purpose. We are distressed by our government, undirected energies, and do many things, but nothing long. It is our duty to find ourselves. Summarizing all of that, there are tons of voices pulling at you. This is the kind of mom you need to be. This is what you need to do. This is who you need to be. This is what you were made to do. Because this mom does this on Instagram, you need to do this. Because this mom chops all of her kids' sandwiches for lunch and writes the notes, that's what you need to do. No. We have to know ourselves. That's what this quote was saying. We have to find ourselves, and you need to find yourself. You need the law of awareness. You must know yourself to grow yourself. You need to sit down and take a long, hard look who you are and become aware of those strengths and weaknesses. And you need to ask God. Seek God, and He'll give you wisdom. Seek God, and He will give you wisdom. And He will make you aware of how you want your child to be shaped. I love this. It says, there are many voices of counsel, but few voices of vision. Habakkuk 2:2 says, make the vision plain and run with it. We have to begin to be intentionally aware of who we are and create a vision for who we want our children to be, who we want to be as an example to them, so that we have a clear vision and can run with it on a daily basis. Because remember, you want to be a mom who goes to the church you intended to go to and not go to Planet Fitness because you zoned out and you went to the place you're comfortable. Meaning we don't want to zone out in life and live a reactive life that leads to regret. We want to live a proactive life that leads to us living to our full potential, because when you as a parent live to your full potential, your child can't help but live to their full potential, because it's not what you say, it's what you do that makes the biggest impact in your child's life. But you have to be aware of those tendencies. You have to be aware. I'll never forget, my parents always sharing with us in those moments, yes, this is my weakness, but this is my strength, and this is how I use my strength to my advantage, and this is where I've messed up in my weakness. And they were aware. And because they were aware, it allowed us to begin to take a longer look at ourselves and say, we need to be aware of ourselves. And so, moms, I want to encourage you, again, how to transform your life and leadership in 60 minutes a day. We're answering these two questions this season. Why do I need to grow, and how do I grow? Why do I need to grow, and how do I grow? We learned in episode 1 that we cannot be go anywhere in life. We can have great intentions, but we have to have great action. We can't just live reactive lives. That leads to regret. We have to live proactive lives that lead to our greatest potential. And then in episode 2, we learned we're beginning to go, why do we need to grow personally? We're going through those 5 invaluable laws that John Maxwell talks about. I picked 5 out of the 15. Number 1, the law of intentionality. Growth isn't automatic. We have to know ourselves to grow ourselves. The law, that's the law of awareness. The law of intentionality. We must be intentional about where we're going. And then number 2, what we learned about today, the law of awareness. We must know ourselves to grow ourselves. The greatest thing you can do is sit down and begin to understand your strengths and your weaknesses so that you can display and intentionally set vision on how you are going to shape the lives of your children and live your life in front of your children as an example. Thank you for tuning in to episode 3 of Goals with God Moms Edition. Remember, we exist to help purpose-driven moms live their purpose, their God-given purpose. Their purpose-driven moms live their God-given purpose. I would love to stay connected with you on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube, Koach Katlyn, and then also KoachKatlyn.com. I have some great resources there for you to stay connected. So go out and be a rock star mom. Go out and fulfill those goals. Have a great day. We'll see you next time.